Does anyone truly understand ADHD? What if it's not what you imagined, and you could actually change how you deal with it? Welcome to Shift's Perspective, the show where we rethink how we understand the mind. Today, we're talking ADHD, and in this episode, we're diving into executive functions, how they guide behavior, shape decisions, and impact everyday life in ways we rarely notice. I'm Mr. MINDSHIFT, but just like everyone else, you can call me Shift. Back with me are Cassandra, diagnosed with ADHD at 30, and Joe, the father of a 20-year-old son who was diagnosed at 12. Let's start by forming an understanding of what the executive functions are. I know this might be new for many of you, but they're actually a big part of everyday life. They live in the front of the brain and work like your internal CEO, helping you plan, start things, stay focused, and not act on every single impulse. These skills grow throughout childhood and keep developing into your mid-20s. Take a look at the screen behind me, and I'll walk you through what they include. First, we have inhibitory control. That's the ability to pause, resist urges, and delay actions. Then comes cognitive flexibility. This means shifting focus and adapting when plans or rules change. Next is emotional regulation. It's about handling emotions like frustration or excitement appropriately. Now, task initiation. Being able to start a task, even when you don't feel like it. Then we have working memory. That's keeping information active in your mind, while using and processing that information at the same time. Next is planning and overview, seeing the bigger picture and organizing the steps to get there. Then comes organization. This means keeping order and tidying up before, during, and after activities. And finally, self-monitoring, being aware of your own behavior and adjusting when needed. Here's the thing. For people with ADHD, executive functions are often more challenging than for most others. Even small changes can feel big, like a sudden shift in the daily schedule, or just finding out your favorite item in the store has been moved to a new shelf. Adapting takes effort, and it doesn't always happen smoothly. But the biggest struggles? They're usually around planning, structuring tasks, understanding time, and following plans through to the end. It's not about not caring. It's about the brain being wired in a different way. Joe, I can almost imagine, based on what you've already shared about your son, that some of these challenges sound familiar. But I'm also curious. Had you ever heard of the term executive functions before? And did you notice any big changes in him towards the end of his teenage years?
Yeah, I've never heard that term before, executive functions. But now that you say it, it makes total sense. All those things, that was him. Change always hit him hard, even small stuff. And I never got why it got worse with age. I thought he'd grow into it, more logic, more control. But no, it got messier in his teens. Only this past year, things started to settle. He's still hard to make plans with, but giving him clear steps, not open invitations, seems to work. One thing at a time. That's what helps. I really wish we'd known this stuff earlier.
Yeah, Joe, that really makes sense. And what you describe actually lines up with what we know. People with ADHD often have a much later brain development, especially in the frontal lobes, which are key to executive functions. For many, full maturity doesn't happen until their early to mid-30s. So it's no surprise that the late teens and 20s can be extra tough. That's when the world expects you to be independent, but your brain might still be catching up. And Cassandra, what about you? Does any of this sound familiar? From your earlier years, or maybe even now?
Honestly, yeah. I didn't know about executive functions before, but it explains so much. Looking back, I really struggled with change, getting started, or just keeping track of time. And it's weird because now that I'm past 30, I actually feel more aware of myself. Like something's clicked. Maybe what you said about the brain catching up is true. Because I swear I only started understanding how I work in the last couple of years.
That actually makes a lot of sense, Cassandra. And it's something we hear quite often, that things slowly start to make more sense in your 30s. It's not about suddenly having it all figured out, but just having a bit more insight and being able to catch yourself in the moment. That self-awareness you're describing, It's a big part of how those executive functions develop over time. So, where do we even begin? Well, the first step in working with executive functions is getting to know your own challenges. That means asking yourself the right questions. Do you often change plans or cancel at the last minute? Is it hard to stop yourself in the middle of an argument? Do you struggle to keep things tidy at home or at work? These are just examples. You'll find more questions in the link in the video description to help you explore how your executive functions actually work. Once you've identified your challenges, the next step is finding tools that can make everyday life easier. There are actually lots of practical strategies and supports for people who struggle with executive functions. And to give you a better overview, I'll show some of them on the screen behind me. Structure can be really hard when you live with ADHD, but it's also one of the most powerful tools you can use. We're talking about routines, predictability, and visual planning. Try to keep steady routines where possible, and plan your tasks so they feel manageable. Build in regular breaks, often and early. Use a calendar. Write your plans down, on paper or digitally. Map out your day and your week ahead of time. And always have a backup plan. What will you do if someone cancels? What if a meeting gets rescheduled? What if a family trip feels overwhelming? You can also use tools like the 10 H's, a structured way to prepare for activities. We've added a link to these in the video description. Set alarms to remind you of what's next. And don't postpone things, but only if your plan is realistic to begin with. It's better to complete one thing than to delay 3. Ask for help when a task feels too big. Make a plan with someone you trust to check in and ask how it's going. Just knowing someone will follow up can make it easier to get started. Write down little recipes for tricky routines, like listen to a podcast while doing laundry. That pairing can make the task feel lighter and more fun. And don't forget to reward yourself. Celebrate finishing a task, even a small one. Plan things you enjoy in between the tougher stuff. And yes, checking something off a list can feel like a win all by itself. So, as we've seen, executive functions shape a lot of what we do every day. When they don't work as expected, things like structure, planning, and emotional control can become real obstacles. But it's not about fixing who you are. It's about understanding how your brain works and finding smart ways to support yourself. The more awareness you build, the more tools you can use, and the better your everyday life can feel. What if understanding ADHD wasn't about labels, but about unlocking potential? In our next episode, we're diving into coherence, the ability to create meaningful connections from details, whether they're linguistic, social, or sensory. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to explore this on a more personal level, you can join the Free Shifts Perspective Forum. The link is below. And for those of you who want to go deeper, you'll also find worksheets, tools, and extra content in the description. Hope to see you again.